So I think that we are able to start now. Welcome to those who just joined us. And without further ado, I am now leaving the floor to Dylan for the presentation. Thank you so much. Enjoy and see you later.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to emphasize, certainly if you have questions, drop them in the chat box, because I love for these sessions to be a little interactive, and we'll certainly allot time at the end to address any of your specific questions. Again, just to quickly reintroduce myself, I'm Dylan Mosenthal. I serve as the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Fordham University's Gabelli School of Business in New York City. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here. I think we have people probably in all different time zones, so I should say good morning or good evening wherever you're calling in from around the globe. Today's webinar is a topic that I think is quite important, because it's one of the questions I field the most when I am out on the road recruiting or meeting with prospective students. This notion of the differences between an MBA program and an MS program. They're both at their core, master's level programs. Sometimes you see that there's a lot of similarity in the content for the curriculum in both an MBA and, say, a master's in management program. And so I want to spend the first chunk of this webinar really going through what are the primary differences between the two types of degrees, because there are some significant differences. So I will start by highlighting those differences. We'll talk about, we'll juxtapose MBA and MS as far as talking about the profile of student in each type of program. We'll talk about how career and professional goals are different for both an MBA and an MS student. And then we'll also talk about differences in the format and the curricula across both types of programs. Okay, I'll wrap up with just some information about the Gabelli School of Business and the programs that we have to offer. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, we will dedicate the last chunk of this webinar to addressing any of your specific questions. Okay, so to jump right in, who is it for? I think that's the question I always challenge prospective students, right? When they're thinking about what type of program is right for them. I talk about the profile of student that you'll find in either an MS program or, in this case, a full-time MBA. Because if you look really across the globe at the profile of student in a specialized master's, it's quite different than someone who typically will go and pursue their MBA. And I think that first bullet point is the most important, which is full-time MBAs have started their career typically. They are in the early stage of their career, but they have several years of work experience under their belt. Okay. Now, depending on the country, I know for most American-based full-time programs, the average years of work experience is about 5. And the profile student that you'll find in a full-time MBA is someone who is looking to make some sort of career pivot. They're looking to make some sort of change, whether they've worked 4 years in a specific industry and they want to change industries, or maybe they want to stay in the same industry, but they want to change their functional role within that industry. They are quitting their job where they've been working for 4 to 5 years and are pursuing a full-time degree, a full-time MBA, in order to navigate this career transition that they're looking to make. Okay, that is, again, there's exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, that is the profile full-time MBA student. A specialized master's student typically is someone who is in the pre-professional portion of their career, so to speak. So maybe they've done some internships in undergrad. They have some work experience on more of a part-time basis, but they have yet to fully dive into a career at the rate that a full-time MBA would have already. So again, there are exceptions to the rule. We certainly have people with work experience in our specialized masters, but generally speaking, we get a lot of students in our MS programs that are coming straight out of undergrad, right? They just received their bachelor's degree and they're looking to kind of enhance what will be their first job out of school by doing a specialized master's right on the heels of their undergraduate degree. Okay. Now, where you'll always find people who are kind of stuck in the middle are those that have maybe 1 or 2 years of work experience, and they're debating whether the full-time MBA or the MS is the right fit. Typically, that's a conversation that's best had with the schools themselves. Some schools have a history of taking MBAs that maybe only have 2 years of work experience. For us, we really require a minimum of 3. So we typically will direct students who maybe only have 1 or 2 years to pursue a specialized master's degree. Okay. And then the last bullet point here is about the financial investment. So MBA programs are typically going to be more expensive than MS programs. Part of that is due to the duration, and I'll talk more about structure in a little bit, but full-time MBA programs are minimum a year. Most of them are 2 years. Specialized master's degrees are typically 1 year or less. And of course, understanding the profile of student, a full-time MBA is someone who's earned a salary for 4 to 5 years, right? So in theory has some sort of disposable income. An MS student may not, right? So the investment is not as big for a student in one of the MS programs. Okay. Moving on to career goals. So this actually, all these slides kind of, there's a synergy between all 3, because obviously the career goals tie into the profile of student in each program. For a full-time MBA student, someone who already has 4 to 5 years of work, they are looking to graduate from an MBA program into management level positions, right? Into leadership roles. So they're graduating and they're getting, typically an MBA, post-MBA salary is in terms of US dollars, in the 6-figure range, right? Our average salary for full-time MBAs is right around $180,000. And so they're looking to be, managing a team of people, whether it's in marketing or in financial services or in consulting. They're not going into entry-level positions in this new job that they're pursuing. They're entering into management level roles. Okay. Specialized master's students, considering again the profile, a lot of them have never worked. They are getting what I consider enhanced early career positions. So they're still entry level, but they are, they're robust, prestigious entry level jobs because they have this additional specialized master's under their belt. Okay. One term that you will always hear in the context of, business education or graduate management education is this notion of the network. But I promise you, if you end up going to business school, you will be so sick of the term networking, because it's something that is harped on constantly by everyone at the business school, how important it is to build your network, how important it is to be networking in order to secure jobs. And certainly that's one of the primary motivations why you invest a graduate business degree. For full-time MBAs, they've already built somewhat of a professional network, right? Because they've worked for 4, 5, 6 years, right? Maybe at multiple companies. So they know people in industry. For them, the MBA is a means to expand their professional network. Specialized master's students, it's a great way to start the building process of their professional network. Okay. And then I already alluded to salaries. This obviously ties into the types of roles that are that recruiters are recruiting for out of each program. Companies, when they come to recruit MBA students, they're looking to hire them at high salaries, right? In the 6-figure range in US dollars terms. For specialized master's students, not as high, probably higher than what you'd find for a lot of entry-level positions, but not necessarily comparable to MBAs who have already accumulated 4 to 5 years of work and are getting hired into management and leadership positions at a company. Okay. And lastly, I'll just talk about the format and the curriculum for each program. And again, I think the theme for everything that I'm talking about today is that I'm generalizing, right? Because every program might have a different profile for their program. And certainly when it comes to the format and the curriculum, we see that a lot of programs are starting to evolve. You see a lot more flexible MBA options, online programming, things of that nature. So this is, of course, generally speaking, but what you'll find for most, again, US-based American full-time MBA programs, they're 2 years, okay, where you are moving past the theory of these functional areas that you're learning and really focusing on the applied learning aspect of these topics, right? So, for example, in our MBA program, our students, yes, they are taking accounting and operations and marketing and finance, but within 3 months, they are partnered up with a company and doing consulting work, right? So it's not enough to just know, the principles based on a textbook. MBA students are expected to, in a very quick time, be able to apply it into real world settings. Okay, I think that's a kind of a constant theme that you'll find in a lot of MBA programs. For full-time MBAs, you'll see that because these students are going to be graduating and going into leadership positions, there is a real emphasis on leadership and soft management skills, right? That's kind of ingrained within the core curriculum. So while you can specialize and make it a very technical degree, if that's the route you want to go, regardless, you will still be working on your soft skills and your leadership skills, because the expectation from employers is that when you come on board to their company, you have the skills to be a good manager, to be a good leader. So you'll find that it's a skill set that is constantly worked on during your time as an MBA student. And then I mentioned this at the top, but a 2-year program, it's obviously a longer time commitment. One of the main reasons you'll find that a lot of full-time MBA programs are a bit longer is because they have a built-in internship as part of their curriculum. The internship for a lot of full-time MBA students is the way they get their job, right? They apply to be an intern at a company. In the summer between their 2 years, they will intern at that company. And then hopefully, if they've done well at the internship, they convert that internship into a full-time job offer. Okay. Moving on to specialized master's programs, again, generalizing here, but most are going to be a year long. That is typically the duration. You see now more than ever some accelerated programs that you can complete in 6 to 8 months. Some specialized master's degrees might be longer depending on how robust the topic is. So we have 1 2-year MS program, which is our quantitative finance degree, also known as financial engineering. There's obviously a lot of content and skills that you need to develop in order to graduate with that degree. So it's a little bit longer. But for the most part, you're talking about a 1-year commitment. And while a lot of MS programs will have an element that's focused on applied learning, a lot of these degrees are going to be theory-based, right? And so you're going to be doing a deep dive into a specific subject area and understanding everything from the theoretical point of view. And there's not necessarily going to be as much of a focus on applying the learning right away. Okay, it's much more focused coursework, as that third bullet point will tell you. And the shorter time commitment is what we just talked about, it being typically a 1-year program. I'll just wrap up this portion before I talk about Fordham's program specifically with a story that I think is appropriate to share, because it's a very clear way of defining the differences between an MS program and an MBA program. And it's a story that one of our Fordham alumni told our MBA students. So he's a company, but he's at the suite level at a very big Fortune 500 company. So he's on the senior leadership team for this massive global company. And he was telling our MBA students, he said, when I have a finance related question, he's like, I go to our finance department and I can talk to anyone on that team. These are folks that have specialized master's degrees in finance, whether it's quantitative finance or just general finance. They're experts when it comes to the functional area of finance. And he says, same thing with accounting, right? If I have an accounting problem, I go to my accounting team. These are the ones that have specialized master's degrees in accounting. They're experts. They can answer anything you need to know about accounting. And then he presented this other situation. He said, our company was recently considering whether or not to open up a branch of our, a headquarters, an Asia headquarters in Tokyo. So they were thinking about, leasing a massive skyscraper and starting what would be a big Japanese market for their product. And he said, this is obviously a big decision, and we put together a committee in order to help determine whether or not this is a decision we should make. And he said everyone on that committee had an MBA, because MBAs are trained to look at all of the functions on a business, all of the forces on a business, whether it's finance or accounting or staffing or operations. They see how all of the pieces work together, and can then make an informed decision about whether or not it's the right decision for the business to make, right? So both types of employees are critical to the operation of the company. The people that are experts in the finance and accounting department, and the people that can look at, business problems from a macro point of view, from a bird's eye perspective, and see how all of the forces work together in order to move forward. Okay, so I think that's a good story to kind of understand kind of these key differences between the types of degree programs. I'll spend just a couple of minutes here talking about the curriculum and the different offerings that we have for our specialized master's degrees. So I mentioned the full-time MBA structure. What you see here is what is typical for most American-based full-time MBA programs. A 2-year structure where your first year is dedicated to giving you all of these foundational areas of business. And I mentioned this alum who put together this committee of people who could really look at this, business decision through the lens of all of the functional areas of business. That's what the first year curriculum is designed to do, right? You'll understand at a foundational level, but at least have a baseline proficiency in accounting and finance and stats and marketing and operations, right? All of the courses that touch a business. Your second year is then when you start to specialize. So each student will have a different specialization based on their career goals and based on their areas of interest. Okay. Just to give you a quick snapshot of the areas in which students can take elective courses. These are the cross-functional and primary concentrations that we offer. One note that I'd like to make about the concentrations, because I think this is a misconception that a lot of students have when they start our program. They tend to liken concentrations to majors in undergrad, in the sense that I'm sure we have several of you in the audience who are currently studying in undergrad. At one point, you had to declare your path of study, right? You had to indicate, I'm going to study engineering or I'm going to study accounting. There is no process like this for our MBA program. There is no point where you're going to have to choose a concentration area. These are merely categories in which we offer elective courses. So the one requirement is that you take 8 electives. How you choose to go about distributing electives across these different concentration areas is ultimately up to you and the skills that you're looking to develop, right? If you're someone who's worked in marketing for 4 to 5 years and you're looking to get a job in financial services, your academic advisor will probably tell you it's in your best interest to take as many finance courses as possible, right? But we also have a lot of students who come in who are entrepreneurs, who have a business idea, maybe that they've already started that business, and they need to be a jack of all trades. They need to be someone who understands accounting extremely well and marketing and finance. And so they may cast a wide net when it comes to taking their electives. Ultimately, that decision is up to you. But I just wanted to point out that flexibility is there regardless of the pivot that you're looking to make. We're never going to pigeonhole you into 1 or 2 of these concentration areas. Okay. I'll quickly go back. We already talked about the internship briefly, but this is the most critical component of an MBA curriculum because it is the path to landing a full-time job, which is the motivation for why full-time MBA students are pursuing the degree in the first place, right? They're looking to make some sort of transition into either an industry or a functional role where they don't have experience. And so naturally, the company wants to see you in action before they offer you a management level title and a 6-figure salary, right? So those 3 months in the summer between your first and your second year are critical for making sure that you are successfully managing that transition, okay? And then I'll quickly just mention the Global Industry Project, and this is something I alluded to earlier as well. This is a consulting project that our students will engage in where they're teamed up with 4 or 5 other MBA students, and they will work with a company overseas and work on some sort of deliverable for that company. And then the kind of the capstone portion of that project is the students will travel to the country to present their deliverable on site. So actually, as we speak, our full-time MBA students are in Santiago, Chile, where the project is taking place this year, and they're visiting the companies there for a week. So that's one of 2 global projects that you'll do in your first year. We also travel with our cohort to London as part of the Gabelli launch pre-term. So that's just a quick snapshot on the full-time MBA. I'll also give you a rundown of our specialized master's programs. We don't have time to necessarily go through the specifics for each one, but I will share my contact information. If you are interested in one of these programs, send me an email. We can dive into specifics about the curriculum and job outcomes and things of that nature. But I think the easiest way to look at our MS offerings is in categories, functional categories, so to speak. So you have analytics programs. We have our MS in business analytics, which is one of our more popular programs. Working with data, marketing intelligence, very similar to business analytics, except you're learning all of the same, data science skill through the lens of marketing, right? So if you're looking to work in marketing, obviously the work that you do nowadays is all data work. So it'll give you the skill sets to land a position within the marketing industry. We also have an information technology degree. Being in New York City, we attract a lot of students interested in working on Wall Street or working, in some manner in financial services, whether it's on the front end or the back end. So we have both a traditional finance degree, which is much more flexible as far as the offerings. I think if you're looking to be in a client-facing role or more front office position, the MS in finance is probably a better fit. We also have the quantitative finance degree, which is much more technical and designed for people who are looking to be more on the back end, on programming side of a financial operation. As far as our management degrees, we have the master's in management, which is a very common degree you'll see in particular in Europe, where essentially that first year of a full-time MBA curriculum where you're getting really you're taking a broad array of courses across all of the functional areas of business. Same sort of thing will happen in our MS in management course. We also have media management and a strategic marketing communications degree, and then accounting and taxation as part of our professional services suite. So again, we don't have the time necessarily to go through the curriculum for each one of these programs, but message me on the side and I'd be happy to set up a time to chat or at least put you in touch with one of my colleagues who oversees admissions for these individual programs. Okay. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about New York City. I'm not sure how many people we have here on the call who have been to New York City or who may be living in the tri-state area. But at the end of the day, I think our location is our most significant value proposition as a business school. And it's for a lot of reasons. Number one being the ability to network. And I mentioned earlier how you'll be so sick of that term by the time you're done with a graduate business program. The reason it is emphasized so heavily is because it is the only way you are going to land a job is by networking. That's the way these industries are set up. They want employees to be referring prospective employees to talent acquisition teams, to human resources teams. And so being in a place with the highest concentration of Fortune 500 companies, being in a city that many people consider to be the business capital of the world means you're going to have a lot of opportunities to go and meet with specifically Fordham alums that are still working in the tri-state area. So just looking at this slide, and for those of you who might not be familiar, Fordham University is a fairly large university, right? I'm here speaking on behalf of the business school, but we have an undergraduate institution further north in the city that's quite large. We have a law school. We have a graduate school of arts and sciences. just business school alums, we have over 11,000 that are still living in the tri-state area. Okay. And when you're talking about these opportunities to have one-on-one conversations, that access is critical. Being able to tell someone, hey, I'm located in Midtown. You name the day, you name the place. I can come to your office. You're only 15 minutes away. That allows for more engagements than if you were somewhere outside of a major city like New York. Not to mention, networking aside, I think the opportunities you have to take classes with faculty members who are working professionals is another significant advantage, right? We have a lot of electives that are taught by people who will finish their day job and come and teach one class a night, from 6 to 8 on, an area that they're experts on because they're living and breathing that topic every day, right? And that also goes for guest speakers that we can bring in because of our location. So, being in New York, I think, especially for people looking to pursue careers in business, there's really no better place in the world. And I see there's some questions, so we're going to get to those shortly. Just really quickly wanted to cover some logistical things about the admissions requirements. So I won't go through all of these. I think these are pretty straightforward. You'll see that the requirements are consistent with what you'll find at a lot of graduate business programs. The one thing I will mention is the standardized test, the GMAT GRE being optional, because I typically get a lot of questions about that. So when it comes to these standardized tests, what we are typically extracting from that score is your ability to handle the quantitative nature of the program, okay? For some students, their quantitative skills are evident elsewhere in their application, right? If you're someone who has an engineering undergrad and has been working in engineering for 3 to 4 years, we know you can handle the quant work in an MBA program, okay? So for those types of cases, I tell students, feel free to submit a score. You by no means need to, because we have all the evidence we need in order to check the box that this person is going to handle the quant work in the program. For those where it might not be so evident, right? If you were like me, I'd studied English literature when I was an undergrad, right? Not very quantitative. I was someone who would have needed to submit a GMAT score in order to showcase to the admissions committee that I could handle the numbers, handle the analytics in the program. Okay, so it does require a degree of self-awareness. We can certainly help you determine whether or not it's in your best interest to submit a test. But just know that that's typically what we're looking for, okay? For all non-native English speakers who did not study in an English curriculum, we also require some sort of language proficiency exam, so a TOEFL or an IELTS, Duolingo, you name it, something to showcase your English proficiency. And then the rest of these admissions components are pretty straightforward. But again, schedule a time to chat with me or anyone on our team, and we can certainly talk more in length about the process and what it takes to submit a very strong application. And lastly, just a quick heads up, we have a deadline coming up very soon on March 22nd, and then just gives you a sense of the remaining deadlines for the fall. And if you're looking to apply for next year, we haven't set those dates quite yet, but they will be very similar to what you see here. So we will typically post those in the early summer, so like in June and July. And as far as the requirements, a lot of the requirements will be the same as well. Okay, this will be my last slide, and then I think we can go and turn it over to questions. I might leave this slide up actually in case, just to give you all time to jot down the contact information for anyone you might be interested in reaching out to. So if you see above, you'll see the programs that each of my colleagues are in charge of overseeing. Like I keep on reiterating, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to schedule a coffee chat. A lot of different types of programming throughout the year where you can learn about these specific programs. I think one of the best ways is to just reach out directly to my colleagues, ask them questions, hop on a call, because they'll be able to answer all of your specific inquiries. Okay. And with that being said, I think we can turn it over to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation. And I would also like to remind to the students that they can still make the questions in the Q&A box. So I see that there are so many questions in the box, so I think that we can go straight to them. The first one is, do you require a minimum level of English?
So there is no cutoff or anything like that. What we, just to give you a sense of, typically what the averages are for an admitted student on the TOEFL, it's around 100. For the IELTS, it's around a 7. But there is no cutoff, right? If someone has a score that's below 100 on a TOEFL, it doesn't mean they're automatically going to be denied. As part of the admissions process for most of the programs, you will be asked to interview. So that will be another area where you can showcase your English proficiency skills, at least in the comprehension and speaking components. So we'll also evaluate your English proficiency during the interview.
Okay, thank you. And connect to this question is, do you offer courses to improve the English level?
So formally, we don't. We have a pre-orientation program called Gabelli Talk that goes beyond just the English proficiency, but it's designed for people who want to start getting used to speaking and learning English before the actual program. That will typically happen in before the start of the program. So we do offer this, but when it comes to when we're making admissions decisions, typically if we feel you're someone who can handle the English, we will admit you, and you won't be required to go into that program. It's more if people are looking to get a head start into immersing themselves into an English speaking culture.
Thank you. Also, do you offer stage opportunities during the studies?
Yeah, so I mean, stage or internships, you name it. I think that's something that's emphasized whether you're in an MBA or an MS program. For MBAs, it's almost a requirement that you're doing an internship. If you want to get a return on your investment, you need to be securing an internship or doing everything you can to secure an internship, because that is the path of least resistance to landing an MBA caliber job. And then for MS programs, same thing. We're in New York City. The idea is we want you to be going out and real world experience. And so even for our MS programs, students are pursuing internships. And I should clarify that there is an entire team of people at Gabelli that are designed or in charge of helping you get those positions, right? They help you. They're the bridge between you and all of the alums, so you know who to reach out to. They're the ones who can help prepare you for your interviews, who can make sure your resume is presentable and ready to submit to companies. So there is a whole department that is there to help you, and we encourage all students to participate in their programming.
Fantastic, thank you. Is it long, the process for the admission? How many weeks it takes usually?
Yeah, good question. So it really all hinges on when students schedule their interviews, because we give students many dates when they can schedule their interviews. But from the time that you've interviewed, it is typically a 2-week turnaround. So if you submit all your materials, typically within the week that you've submitted all your materials, you will receive an invitation to interview. You'll have about a month worth of dates to schedule. If you want a decision quickly, schedule your interview for the next week, because that will ensure that you get a decision 2 weeks later. Some students complain that they've been, I applied at the beginning of March. Why don't I have a decision? And it's because they've scheduled their interview for the end of March. And so we can't obviously release decisions until after their interview. So typically a 2-week turnaround after the interview has taken place.
Okay, great. And how does Gabelli help foreign students with the accommodations?
Yeah, so for MBA students, they're securing their own housing. So we will have some housing seminars that we offer to all students before they arrive, to give them a sense of, what to look for when they're looking for New York City apartments. It's a very unique scene, finding apartments in New York City. And so we're there to help. But there is no guaranteed housing. Students have to go secure their own places. For the majority of MS students, that's also the same. We do offer some graduate student housing that you apply for. And again, we would, talk about what the process looks like once you're admitted and once you're in the student, once you're in the program. But again, it's going to be student specific, depending on which program you're in, what your needs are, what your budget is, etc.
Of course. And do you think that the life there in New York is really expensive? Do you offer some part-time jobs while studying?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think living in any city can be expensive. New York City certainly has a reputation of being very, very expensive. And here's what I'll say as someone who's lived in New York City. Without a doubt, there are areas of New York that you look at the price tag on places and you're like, there's no way I could ever afford this. And one of those areas happens to be right where our business school is, which I think is the first thing students, they get admitted into our program and they'll pull up Google Maps and they'll be like, okay, Gabelli is located right next to Central Park in Midtown. Let me look at, apartments in this area. Just to give you a sense, I think Beyonce and Jay-Z just bought an apartment that's in the building next to where we're located. So we're very lucky to have the location that we have, but typically students aren't living right near the business school, right? And I think that's one of the advantages of being in a city that is really accessible via public transportation. You have students living all over the place, from Southern Manhattan to any of the boroughs, Queens, the Bronx, you name it. It's very easy to get to campus, especially with the subway station we have right next to Gabelli. It's the second most trafficked subway station in New York City. So there's a lot of train lines that come in. So a lot of students are commuting in and getting a more affordable apartment, maybe 20 or 30 minutes away. And I can even bring, for people who might not be familiar with New York City. So Manhattan is an island, right? This is the island. This is a body of water right here. Can you see my mouse if I scroll here like this? Yeah. Okay. So this piece of land here is actually a different state altogether. This is New Jersey. And there was a period where I was living in Manhattan, in New York, towards the, further south on the island. And I had a colleague who lived technically in a different state. She lived in New Jersey, and she would get to campus faster than I would, because all she's got to do is quickly go on a train underneath the river and she's on campus, right? So we have students living in different states that can get to campus within 10 to 15 minutes. So again, I think it's important to cast a wide net when you're looking for apartments. Is it expensive? Yes, without a doubt, especially compared to places that are in rural areas. But there are, every year our students are finding a home that's affordable. It's just a question of casting a wide net and not necessarily looking, right around Lincoln Center next to Central Park.
Okay, great. And coming to the other question, do you think that it could be maybe easy finding a part-time job to?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. So what we encourage students to do to help subsidize the cost is to pursue what are called graduate assistantships, which are part-time jobs, and they're on campus. And so there are two types of graduate assistantship positions available. So you can either be an administrative GA, which means you're working for, say, the admissions office, right? So we have full-time MBAs and MS students that work on our team that help conduct interviews. They help give presentations. They give campus tours. They help with operations. Same thing with the Career Development Center, the Academic Advising Office. They will all hire students to work in their departments. The other category of GA position is what's called faculty GA position. So you partner up with a faculty member and you help them work on their research. You might help with grading their papers for their courses. So there are a lot of opportunities out there for students to pursue graduate assistantships. Those positions will typically go live in August. So right before the program starts, you can apply to as many positions as you want. And it's a very popular way to help subsidize the cost.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do I need to submit a letter of recommendation in the application? And what kind of recommendations are most valuable?
Yeah, that's a good question. So certainly we used to make it a mandatory part of the application process. We typically would like to see one. Not having a recommendation letter is not why your application is going to get held up. Let's put it that way. When it comes to recommendations, here's my one piece of advice. I think a lot of students have this misconception that if the person who writes the recommendation has a very prestigious title, that the admissions committee will be impressed, and then that will be the reason the student is admitted. And typically what you see is that's actually not the case, because the CEO of a company, maybe you've had one interaction with them, but if they don't know you, they're not going to write you a substantive letter. It'll be very surface level. And the recommendations that stand out are the ones where people have over years have come to know this individual and know them extremely well, and can paint a picture that is very clear to the admissions committee about why they should admit that student. So my recommendation is, no pun intended, is that you pick someone who knows you well, who can speak to not only your personality characteristics, but how you operate in a workplace or in an academic environment. I think that's the most important.
Thank you. And are there any specific academic or professional backgrounds that the university values in applicants?
That's a great question. And this is, again, another misconception that I think a lot of students have, is that they think, oh, well, I work at a business school. I want to see people who have business backgrounds. And that couldn't be further from the case, right? There isn't one type of undergraduate degree or a certain type of professional experience that we're looking for, right? I think depending on the program, there might be, for quantitative finance, for example, there are some technical prerequisites, right? So again, I'm generally speaking, but in the context of an MBA program, we have students who have humanities backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, business backgrounds, you name it, right? In our cohort right now, we had someone who was a professional pianist and who studied music their whole life. It's all about how you can take your working experience and present them in a way to the admissions committee that will make them say, this person can manage this career transition. Okay. And I think that's where the interview can be so critical. Interviews and essays is where you can really position your experiences in a productive way. And one piece of advice on that front, especially for MBA candidates, we're not looking for a certain industry, we're not looking for a certain academic background, but generally speaking, we are looking for some evidence of management experience, right? You are applying to a management degree, and management experience comes in many forms, right? It doesn't mean managing people necessarily. It could mean managing clients, managing projects, managing budgets, you name it. I think you do want to look at your resume through that lens, because that's how admissions committees are going to be looking at your resume. What sorts of management experiences does this student have?
Great, thank you. If I have a bachelor's degree, in order to enroll in a graduate course, do I have to offset some credits?
So typically we don't offset credits, so students will have to pursue the full credit load. I mentioned prerequisites. So some MS programs will require prerequisite courses. And in the case where you have not completed those prerequisite courses, we will provide them to you. So you will come a little bit early and take those prerequisites on site, which would require additional credits for completion for the program. But typically there's no waiving out of certain credits for programs.
Okay. And I think you already partially answered to this question, but what specific qualities or characteristics does Gabelli look for in prospective candidates?
Yeah, that's another great question. Every student is different, and I wish there was, like a checklist of things, like we need to see X, Y, Z, and typically it's, everyone brings to the table a unique set of characteristics. I do think, the people that end up being successful in our programs are the ones that are both self-aware, right? So they know what their deficiencies are, they know what their strengths are, they know what they need to work on so that they can really take advantage when they're in the program. So I think having self-awareness is really important. And I think a genuine motivation for pursuing the degree. And that's something that we will try to get to the bottom of when we're interviewing you and when we're evaluating your essays. You know, I've seen countless times MBA candidates be like, I hate my job. I hate my job so much. I got to quit and get my MBA without having done any research on what they want to do afterwards. Their motivation is just to stop their job that they don't like, which is not enough, right? You need to have a clear sense of where you want to end up, even though that might change. We know that might change, but coming in with a plan and a genuine motivation for pursuing the degree is really important. I've also heard a lot of students say, I've known I was going to get my MBA since I was 12 years old because my father told me to get an MBA. That's not a good enough motivation, right? You have to really see clearly, you know, the reasons for why you're leaving your job and how you see this degree fitting into your short-term and long-term career goals.
Of course. And moving to the last question. Hello, I'm interested in an MS in management and looking at the site. I saw you guys offer tuition remission, but I don't found any program for full scholarships. There are any programs in this sense, and there is any student housing for international students?
Yeah, so we didn't really talk about scholarships, but I can quickly touch on that. So we evaluate everyone for every program for some sort of merit-based scholarship. For the MS programs, the highest award you can get is $35,000 US dollars. And the range is from 10,000 up to 35,000. For the full-time MBA, we do offer full tuition, all expenses covered scholarships as well. So the range is a lot higher. And typically the average scholarship is around $60,000. Actually, it was a little bit more last year, around $70,000. Obviously, the price tag is much more than an MS program for the full-time MBA. When it comes to scholarships, there's nothing you need to do in order to apply. We look at everything that you submitted as part of your application when we make scholarship decisions. Okay, and then the tuition remission really comes into play with graduate assistantships. So that's the way in which you're paid as a GA. You're getting your hours essentially subtracted from your tuition bill. So that's where tuition remission is applied when you pursue graduate assistantships. With housing, again, we don't offer housing. You can apply for housing, but you're still paying for the housing. And again, most students are going and finding apartments in the city.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that we answered to all the questions. First of all, I would like to thank our panelists for being here with us today and for the really interesting debate. I hope we have helped the students to answer to some of their questions. And I would also like to thank the students for being connected with us today. I don't know if, Dylan, you want to say something, you want to leave the students with a message maybe before we say goodbye.
Well, no, I want to thank you all for attending. I know you all have busy schedules, so we appreciate you spending time with us for what ended up being 50 minutes. But I highly encourage you all to reach out. I think that's the one closing remark I will have. We're here to help. I think this is the big decision to pursue a graduate degree. You know, it's not an easy one. It can be transformational, but it's still scary to make this leap. And so just know that we're here to help. We're not just these people who say admit and deny on an application. We're counselors. We're here to help, you know, talk things through with you. So I kept this slide up just in case you didn't have a chance to jot down our email addresses, but I definitely encourage you all to reach out.
Thank you so much. I've just put in the chat the link to get the certificate of attendance if you want to request it. And so thank you again for being with us today. And of course, we hope to see you again in the next webinar organized by Docsity in partnership with Gabelli Fordham School of Business. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.